sheet there by Pastor Raleigh Wrench at the Ridge Church. Some of you have connections and family at these two sister churches in the Greater Dayton Association of Baptists. This refocus journey is something that has been going across the U.S. in a variety of churches, but it's come here to the GDAB as well as the state of Ohio, and it's come here to Dayton Ave. I'm excited about that because it has great potential to help churches refocus on the mission. Now, as Pastor John said earlier, we've been intending and looking toward this before the Lord made it clear that Pastor John and Sarah were going to be transitioning in their ministry setting. But it could not have come at a better time, because what we need most is for us to keep doing what we've been doing, and most importantly, for us to maintain missional momentum. And this journey is a set of tools that helps the church stay together as they refocus. There will be a refocus team that will be assembled consisting of 12 people, both pastors and lay leaders alike. We're working on that roster right now. But the intention of the next 30 minutes or so is to let you have a sneak peek preview as to what that refocus team will be working on, the types of assessments that we'll be using, the tools for communication, the action steps for moving forward, and ultimately it's going to involve us all and require us all to be heavily invested as we step forward together. So I'll work through these slides that will encourage you and I believe strengthen you with what the Lord has for us in the days to come. And I'll be happy to answer questions you may have after we're all done. But for the sake of time, I'll try to get you out at 1:30. So Refocus was founded by this man named Rob Peters. He's the founder. Rob started this because of his heart to see churches regain their focus on the mission. And it came out of a set of data and information you can see on your screen here, that there are a lot of churches that are just kind of stuck. They're plateaued, they're declining. There's a large number of them. 40,000 of 47,000 Southern Baptist churches are plateaued or declining. And in the past 10 years, the national population has grown by almost 10%, while the church population has declined by almost 10%. More than 72 churches close their doors each week in the U.S., about 3,600 every year. So these stats are somewhat alarming. I'm not alarmed because Dayton Avenue is in decline. I'm not alarmed because Dayton Avenue is stagnant. Dayton Avenue's opportunity to refocus is perfect on the heels of three things. Number one, the recent decision regarding building. And the Lord made that very clear through a process. So grateful for our long-range planning team and all the work that they put into that process. There will be significant insights that they discovered that, Lord willing, will dovetail neatly and cleanly into this refocus process. The second thing, though, that is really appropriate for this is preparation for future. Part of my job in the Greater Dayton Association of Baptists is to serve our 90 churches in a variety of ways. One of those ways is by doing pulpit supply, but also preacher search training. So churches will typically put together a pulpit search committee, it's often called. How many of you have ever been on one of those? Okay, about 5 or so of us in this room. That's an intense process. I do training. Now, I would have loved, when I became a pastor and I signed up to serve a church, I would have loved to have had a process like Refocus to have been done before I came. So as we think about and pray about, I know we're still processing, we got 4 months left with Pastor John, we'll make the most of it. But as we look toward the future, we prepare for that time when the Pulpit Search Committee is together. This process, these outputs, will be incredibly helpful for the new pastor who comes to lead us. The third most important thing is that we maintain missional momentum. The idea with Refocus is that it helps a church stay focused on the Great Commission and be refined to be as maximally effective as possible on the mission. So it's time. There are leadership challenges to refocusing. Most churches struggle to make accurate assessments, to reposition the ministry, to answer directional questions, lead change, build leaders, or execute a plan. Those of you who, in your workplace, you understand what I mean when I say this. This is a challenge for any leader, for any organization. Refocus helps put some tools together to assist pastors in leading the church forward in these things. The revitalization curve is just a basic description. I mean, I don't know where you would put Dayton Avenue right now. If this curve reflects growth and then decline, there are many churches, and the stats I showed you a moment ago, there are many churches that are here at this death rattle, and they're about to go into extinction. The churches will close. There are many churches that they're in a rut, and they see that, and they wake up, and they say, we don't want to go to the death rattle and die before it's too late. And that's when they kind of wake up and refocus. But really, the best time to refocus is not when you're at the death rattle. It's most often too late at that point. The best time is also not at the rut, nor is the best time really at the treadmill. Those of you who have led organizations know that the best time to refocus and to breathe new life into your organization, your church, is over here. You actually cut into the growth right here so that you can refocus on a new growth pattern. So that's the heart behind this, is that we would together go in the right direction of growth for the church. When I say growth, I'm not just talking about numbers. That's what we often hear. I'm talking about biblically faithful growth, fruitfulness. 1 Peter 5 speaks about the role of the elders, the shepherds, to exercise oversight. Refocus was birthed as a help for pastors to exercise the skill set of overseer. I went to seminary for a lot of years, gave them a lot of money, got a lot of great training, and I am a better man because of seminary. One of the gaps that seminaries often have is the skill set of overseer. I did not receive training on how to lead organizationally, lead the church through change. Had great training on understanding the Bible, preaching, counseling. There are several great classes I had. Tremendous. But I did not have good training on this. So that's why Rob Peters developed Refocus through the Corpus Ministry to help with the oversight, the overseer piece. It is tough. I mean, leadership, you're an organizer, you're a leader, you're an administrator, you're a communicator, a vision caster, a resource developer. Pastors have it tough. But central to Refocus is helping to fill that gap of the overseer skill set. It takes a lot more than most pastors realize. You've got to accurately diagnose the problem, have a clear and compelling plan to implement change, have the character and courage to lead change, and then lead the church to embrace the change. So here are some of the nuts and bolts. This is if Pastor John gave you the 50,000-foot view, I've just given you the 40,000-foot view, and this slide introduces you to a 30,000-foot view. So we're going down the funnel here. Now, just buckle up with me, because in the next 15 minutes, you're going to feel a little bit overwhelmed. Now, my intention in giving you these next dozen slides or so is not that you've got to remember all this. I'm just giving you an overview so you can know approximately what to expect over the next 6 months. My job, as what Corpus calls a pathfinder, my job is to know the tools, bring the team together so that we can implement the tools together. But in the spirit of transparency and prayer, I want you to know some of the inner workings of what's going to take place. So, the first step in the process is called the discovery. The second is called the convergence. Third, the pyramid, the path, the ladder, then the toolkit. And the next dozen or so slides are going to unpack these. But if you were going to look again at a 30,000-foot view, this is the 6-step process for us to refocus. In the discovery, when the Refocus team meets together, we work through some of the tools and assessments built into this step. The goal is to look, to listen, and to learn. And really simply establish current reality. Where are we at as a church? So if you were going to guess what would be a part of that evaluation, you would guess rightly if you said, well, we probably look at attendance numbers, probably look at baptisms, probably look at some other data that is quantifiable. We'll also look at some qualitative data. So I know, getting a little nerdy, but I want to give you the scoop here. In the discovery, we do a spiritual assessment as well on several angles of the church. We talk about the spiritual condition. What's our gospel focus? Spiritual maturity of the church, doctrinal formation, mission activity, and partnerships. All of these things are part of the spiritual assessment that we undertake. There's also a ministry assessment related to each of these 17 things. Are you feeling overwhelmed yet? Never fear, I'm going to the next slide. For another overwhelming set of points here. Some of you are wondering, well, is this going to deal with the membership, or is this going to talk about facilities? Will it talk about our staff? Yes, all of the above. So this is such a thorough process that it will not leave any stone unturned as it relates to our health as a church and us maintaining missional momentum. And it demands a deep level of assessment. It requires patience. I see far too often churches that will just jump into something and they kind of have this mentality that, well, we'll just do something, we'll try it, see if it works. Well, you can do that. A lot of churches do. Sometimes things stick. But to really slow down, take a deep breath, and ask, who are we? Who has God made us to be? What's our community like? What are our passions? Aligning those things requires this level of assessment. It's also slow because we don't really want just one person to tell us what we're going to do as a church. It's the church that governs the church under the lordship of Christ. And so, you all know this. When you involve more and more people, you go a little more slowly. But it's worth it because the end product has everybody on board, communicated well, you've gotten the best ideas from the best thinkers and the most spiritual and character-rich contributors, and you're ready to move forward together.
James, you want any questions in the middle, or do you want to?
Let's get them at the end. Write it down, Robert. The second phase, you can see these icons move along the bottom. So we just talked about discovery. That's current reality. Let's get on the same page as to where we're at. You take the next step, and you ask, the intersection of these three things is really the sweet spot that we're after in this assessment, in this process. And it's us saying, how can we be the very best church we can be? Not just a good church, how can we be the best? And that convergence takes place at the intersection of your passion, your purpose, and your potential. So there are group exercises that we'll do. We'll gather some data, and we'll put it together, and we'll say, okay, what is our 3-mile radius? Who is Xenia? That's our community. Who are we, and who has God gifted us to be as a church? And what are our leaders' particular passions? And at the intersection of those three things, that convergence, we're ready to really be the best we can be. The convergence helps you describe the next steps of faith and obedience God is asking your church to take. So they put together some graphics to help you organize this with these pyramids and other images that will help us to put things together. This is called the pyramid phase. This is what Pastor Bruce mentioned earlier. We talk about our mission, our vision, our values, and our strategy. And when we align those four things, we're ready to roll. Values, why do we do it? Mission, what do we do? Strategy, how do we do it? Vision, where are we headed? So we'll work through this. We'll develop an annual ministry plan that will synchronize and synthesize the findings, set goals with our vision, and then we'll move to the path. How are we going to get this done? So once we get a sense of, okay, God's taken us in this direction. This is how we can be the very best church we can be. Okay, how are we going to get it done? So there are tools and assessments to help us work through a strategy. Now, all of this is somewhat implicitly in place already. Dayton Avenue is a strong church. As Pastor John said, and I fully agree, we are at a very good spot as a church. And so a lot of this will be us communicating with each other and helping to eliminate the potential of silos where this person or ministry is doing this and this one's doing that. We call it getting on the same page, right? So crucial. So crucial. So the strategy talks about how the church designs its plan to make disciples, to obey the Great Commission. You can see an example of one here. Just some tools that others have put together that we'll walk through when we're together in the journey. And then the next stage is really an extension of the disciple-making strategy, and that is the leadership ladder. You can see 3 different examples here. It's probably too small to see, but right here, a very simple church that'd be more of a normative size, 70 or 80 people on Sunday morning, will use a very simple leadership ladder in developing their leaders to be all that God has gifted them to be. You can do a 4-step or a 5 or 6-step leadership ladder. Again, this is one of the tools whereby we clarify where people are at, where they're able to serve, but also growing them into greater and greater potential as leaders. The leadership ladder. I love seeing, part of my role in GDAB, I get to see what other churches are doing with leadership development. I love seeing pastoral internships. I love seeing pastoral residencies. I love seeing other forms of leadership development that are happening. And it's a really great thing to see. This process helps us to develop a plan for developing and raising leaders, to be more intentional. The toolkit is just tremendous. I'll show it more to the team, but it helps us with all kinds of things you need along the journey, related to culture, related to celebrating victories, making hard decisions, leading change, leading meaningful meetings, developing an annual preaching plan. A lot of pastors, this is a great tool for them because they don't have a preaching plan. What are you going to preach next week? Not sure yet. It's not quite Saturday. Let me help you, brother. Let me help you. So putting together a plan. Dayton Avenue already has a strong culture of planning the worship gatherings on Sunday morning, the preaching calendar, these kind of things. So these are examples of tools that are available, some of which we'll use, some of which Dayton Avenue already has strong rhythms, and we won't need these. Worship planning grids. We will use this assessment. It's called the Vision Receptivity Assessment, and it measures things that you can see up there. Let me really zoom in on that so you can see better. Trust versus distrust. This is an assessment that gathers information, inputs from different members of the congregation, and says, basically, this is an oversimplification, but the assessment basically asks Mike, are we more characterized by trust or distrust here at Dayton Ave? Mike gives his honest opinion, right? And then 10 other people, we also gather their data, and it shows all of these things. And you can see the first thing listed in this is what you want. This is where there's a trusting culture, where you're ready to move. You're ready to go together because you guys are on the same page. These second things, a church that's in the middle of distrust, information's being withheld, there's chaos, inflexibility, negativity, controlling deception, religious activity versus missional activity, and fear. What this assessment does is tries to help gather the inputs from people that are in the know, and then the broader the spread, the bigger the circle, the more ready we are. You've probably heard it said that we've got to lead change at the speed of trust. We've got to move forward at the speed of trust. That is so true. This assessment helps the new leader coming in and helps the current leaders to know, all right, this is where we're at. We either need to slow down and rebuild trust, or we've got plenty of relational capital and trust in the bank. It's time to go, and let's go fast. And the church that has a lot of trust, wow, that's a church that's really on mission. I love it. So just another example of the types of things. All right, so I'm wrapping up my time. I'm going to save time for questions. This is a general timeline of how Refocus often goes. Usually takes about 6 months to go through the entire process. There are built-in moments of communication with broader bodies than just that 12 of the Refocus team. Those would be the kinds of updates that this group would receive along the way. Say, hey, here's our findings from the discovery phase. Here are our findings from the convergence phase, etc. In the discovery, it's session 1. We're kind of over here right now in the preparation phase. We're evaluating the need. We've said yes. We're discussing the need. Yes. We're developing the team right now. And then we'll set the refocus dates once those team members are selected. The discovery, the convergence, the pyramid, the path, the ladder. So here's an example of how we might do it. I envision us starting in August, Lord willing, meeting for a second time in September. It might be a Thursday night, it might be a Saturday morning. These meetings would probably be 3 to 4 hours. They would include a meal and refreshments, most likely. These are some logistics we'll work out, but this just gives you a sample or an example of what the timeline might look like. And that's all I've got for slides. So I'll pause. We got 7 minutes. Robert, kick us off with a question.
The timeline.
Yeah.
You just gave it. Why were the 2 dates in bold? Was that slidesmanship, or was there a reason 2 of those dates were bolded and the rest weren't?
No significance, I don't think. What other questions do you guys have? That was a lot. I hope at the same time, I hope it's a little bit overwhelming so that you can understand this does take time. It's going to take several months. But at the same time, I hope you have confidence that there's no need to fear. There are 12 lucky people that are going to be walking through the nitty-gritty of all this. What other questions do you have about Refocus? Yeah, right over here, and then Joe.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, how are you guys selecting the team? Are there certain qualities you're looking for? They've been members a certain amount of time? Are they leaders? Like,
yes.
How are you selecting them?
Outstanding question. Her question for those that may be listening online or didn't hear over here is, how is the Refocus team being selected? So along with this process is a whole page of, here's what you ought to look for. If I were going to boil it down, it would be Christ-like character, it would be similar conviction in the Word, and it would be a competency to help represent and reflect a total picture of the church. So to be honest with you, 12 is a small number compared to the number of qualified people that are here at this church who would do a phenomenal job on the Refocus team. So I've been talking and praying with Pastor John and Pastor Bruce both. We've also gotten inputs from the other pastors and solicited their ideas for who would be the best fit for this. So one practical thing we're thinking about as well is who might have a season of life and time available to invest in this. Now, we're not making the decision, but that is one of the things we consider. And the people that we end up deciding on and asking will have full freedom to say, too busy. And so if that ends up being somebody in this room, know that you have full freedom to say, I just got too much going on. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I know I was on the long range planning committee, and in that process, I had people come to me and say, well, like, how did they pick them? And I would have been interested. And so I know that's kind of like a can of worms to open up, like volunteers or whatever, but I was just kind of curious how that process was being done. So.
Such a great question. Yes. Yeah, and the short answer is there probably will be some people that will be interested that because of the numbers, nothing personal. We are trying to say, okay, not just pastors and staff, but lay people are crucial. We're talking about the difference between having men and women both on the team, old and young, and middle age, people that serve here, serve there, so many factors. Yeah, but we are looking at it from multiple directions. Bruce, anything you would add to that question?
Not offhand.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Joe?
Yeah, how is this, does the dynamics change because we're in transit now with having a leader, a pastor, to not having that? It just seems like most of the churches probably had a pastor.
Yes.
From that focal point. How does that change?
That's a great question, Joe. For those that maybe not been able to hear Dave, the question is, how does this change in light of the fact that our lead pastor has just announced that in the 4 months the Lord will lead him on? The short answer is it will change a little bit. When we're in our gatherings and working through the assessments and pulling all this data together, the difference that it will make is that we will be sharing with the prospective candidate, here's who we are, here's some studies we've done, here's conversations we've had, Here's some of the data that we've collected over all these years from attendance and baptism, etc., membership. So there will be some exercises that because the next lead pastor is not here, they will be kind of punted in some way to the time in which he comes. But this will give them an accurate picture of where we're at now and where the church is taking ownership to say, this is where we want to head. So is that helpful, or you got any follow-up, Joe?
No, I just, well, I mean, like you said, you would love to have that information stepping into a pastorate job.
Yeah, because here's the problem. I was probably guilty of this too. When a church and a pastor are interviewing each other, and they do interview each other, they both put their best foot forward. And a church will often put their best foot forward to say, oh, we got this going on and this, that, the other. And what this does is it gives him some great data that's not just a conversation in a room about how amazing the church is. There are also great tools to help the other side of that, to help get to know the pastor better than just an interview where he's telling you all of his greatest qualities and none of his terrible qualities. So it definitely goes both ways, but this will help in that regard. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, Brother Wakefield.
Doesn't the church constitution, how's it picture into that whole program that you were talking about?
Oh, good question. So how does the church constitution figure into this? What this process might reveal, Wakefield, I don't have any answers to this definitively, but this might reveal some need for constitutional revision. I don't know if that's true or false, but it does. Let me give you an example. One church that I have walked through with this process, they came to the end of their thing and they're like, look, we are super sloppy with church membership. They said, we've got to tighten this up. They said, one of the best things that we feel like we can do to make disciples is to tighten up our membership expectations, clarify them, and then have a church covenant. And they are now teaching on their church covenant. Their church members know what the covenant says, much like we do here. That was one of the outputs of this. It was like, hey, let's make disciples this way. The covenant was a tool to help do that. Does that make sense? Are you having follow-up on that, Wakefield?
The only thought I have is basically anyone coming in, you want to really introduce that. And
Yes.
So they will be aware of what our church body stands on.
That's great.
In this community.
Love that, Wakefield. Yeah. I don't know of a single change that it will make to our Constitution, but that is part of the purpose of this, is to look at everything, your ministries, everything you do, and just say, are we on mission? And are we fervent in that? Or are there tweaks we need to make? And then that's when, of course, the church would walk through that process after this as well. But I think it's a great point, Wakefield, to let people know when they come in, hey, we're a strong church. We are in transition with our leadership. That's just the reality of it. Good. What other questions about Refocus? Yeah.
When you're seeking input about various things, I forget which slide it was.
Yep.
Is there a mechanism in place so that every member has an opportunity to speak versus the 12 leaders saying this is what we think? But for each step, every member gets to have a voice that he or she wishes.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the short answer, Donna, is no. There's not a mechanism by which we can get and aggregate 700 opinions and sort through all 700 opinions whereby we can make decisions on, well, here are our core values. So let me give you a tangible example of that. You know, when you walk down this hallway right here, there's that beautiful glass sheet that's hanging on the wall, and it says our values, right? One of the exercises that we'll do here is there will be a tool that helps draw out from those 12 what are our core values. And, you know, we would all say we value everything the Bible says. That's the baseline. But usually an organization will say, well, these are the values that rise to the top as our core values that we keep in front of us on a regular basis. And in order for that to be memorable and actionable, we boil it down to usually 3 to 5, Donna, usually. So what are Cedarville's core values? Somebody give me those right now. Anybody know those?
Love for God, love for others, excellence in effort, and
Integrity. 4. See, perfect. I knew they would be in the spectrum of 3 to 5. Albert, well done, man. You deserve a raise, brother. Pop quiz on the spot.
Benjamin's got it down.
Okay. Yes. If anybody does, Albert's got it. So that's a great example, though. But for Donna, those core values, there'll probably be 600 different opinions about what our core values are.
Quick follow-up.
Yeah.
For some of those items, though, it might be beneficial to allow those who would wish to express something.
Yes.
I doubt it would be 700, but I think there are various issues or topics that there are people who would like to say things and have no avenue in which to express that.
That's a great point.
So,
Yes, one of the built-in ways that to help accommodate that, Donna, is there are a couple of scheduled updates on progress thus far. And those scheduled updates are, first of all, for a group about this size called the advisory team. And the advisory team helps speak into, here's where we're at right now, and are we off track kind of a thing. But I definitely received that, Donna, because I think that is important for everybody to have a voice. As long as we all go into it knowing, as I pray that I am, going into it with my voice saying I'm only one voice, and we don't, nobody, everybody can't get their way, so to speak.
right. And
Which
I
isn't
think-
your heart, I know.
Right, a lot of people, just to be able to say it
Helps.
helps.
Yeah.
And it's actually heard, like with our children, when they know we hear them, they may not get that ice cream at 10 p.m.
But somebody
they
listened.
know they've been heard.
Yeah, that's a great point. I do want you to know, Donna, and everybody in here, I want you to know that's really valuable what Donna's just said, and that my door is always open for any kind of feedback. I'm not much of anybody, but I'll listen to you. Now, Bruce is somebody, so
That's what he told me.
He said this way, Bruce is somebody. I'm telling you.
yeah, depends on how you say that. Yeah. Okay, we are out of time. If there's any quick ones before we wrap up, then we can take one more lightning round. Any final questions that pertain to the whole group? Okay, find me afterward if you got more. Bruce, I'll turn it back over to you,
All
brother.
right, thanks, James. I would just remind everyone that refocus is not because Pastor has announced his resignation to us in 4 months from now, but it is a wonderful occasion that God has brought different pieces together all at this time, and I think gives us the perfect opportunity as we move forward to really refine and define what it is and who we are and that sort of thing. That will be better for whoever is called and comes in, and for us as a church family as well. All right. Anything I'm forgetting? I'm looking at everyone in the room. Is there something I said I was going to announce and I didn't? I think that was it. Yes, Lisa. I see that hand.
As we talk about the welcome team
Yes.
and all that, I would solicit input from